welcome to Primetime Muscle. I'm Tim Wilkins, as always, joined by Hall of Fame bodybuilder Chris Cormier and IAPB Pro head judge and super promoter Tarek Elgendi, who just got back from the European Amateur Olympia.
Yes, Tim, great quality of athletes. I saw 3 competitors, one figure, one bikini, and one women's physique that turned pro, and they can make an immediate impact in the pro ranks. So, guys, a lot of great European competitors coming up.
And a big turnout.
Yes, over 300 competitors, Olympia, Eastern Europe. Great job by promoter Alina Popa, majestic stage. But it was the quality of the athletes that I was impressed. You know, I judge a lot of these pro qualifying events, and I believed that event was possibly one of the best, if not the best, in terms of quality of athletes.
Well, we'll look forward to seeing those new pros on stage soon as pros. And today's topic is about the pros, and no one better to talk about that than Chris Cormier. Why are bodybuilders not competing as much as they did in the 90s?
Well, Tim, that's something I have been, thinking about lately because, back when I was competing, we all had to answer to Joe. We had to answer to Joe every year after our whole year of competition. So whatever you did on stage, that's what's going to dictate what you were going to get paid that next year. So I had my first contract with them about 6 months into my turning pro at the USA in 1993. So at that time, I'm doing every Arnold, every Olympia, and I was always telling myself, if I'm not going to be invited to the Arnold, and if I'm not qualified for the Mr. Olympia, then I'm finished.
And that was how you survived, how you made your money. So it begs the question, how are they getting by? And if they need to get out there and get the contest winnings and get the notoriety, which gets them the sponsorships by the supplement companies or the clothing companies, how are they getting their money, and why are they not? Is there another reason, a physiological reason, they're not putting themselves through the prep stages of getting on stage and competing?
Well, that's really a good question, but I think some of the supplement companies have become a little bit lenient in regards to their expectations. They're like, well, you're qualified for the Olympia, and we'll see you there. When in reality, if I were to own a supplement company, I want my guy on evidence. I want my guy winning shows so he can attract viewers to his channel and to my product. But I think supplement companies now are just happy for them going to the Olympia. There's another factor, and which is social media. Now, through social media, they can keep their attention on them and attract people to their social media. But, on the same token, Blessing Awodibu, he was being criticized because people said, you're just an IG bodybuilder. He didn't get his respect until he won shows. As a judge, I can tell you that I believe that competitors that compete a little bit more often become better bodybuilders. When Brendan Curry won the Arnold Classic, he won the Mr. Olympia. He did the same thing this year. He didn't have to, because he's already qualified as a former Mr. Olympia. But he did the Arnold Classic. Now he's going to the Mr. Olympia. I think guys like Hassan Mustafa won 2 events. Blessing Awodibu won 2 events. Now we have Andrew Jack, who won in Texas, and now it's going to the Arnold UK, so he's got 2 events. I think those guys have an advantage over the guys that are just waiting to, contest prep one time and, see what happens. That's my personal opinion.
Well, now, Chris, let's talk about that advantage or disadvantage. We know there's a difficulty to staying in shape for great periods of time, but once you're in that shape, shouldn't you just get up there and refine and work on what works for you, what doesn't?
Yes, I would myself, because as you do a show, there's little mistakes you can make, there's little things that you can tinker with that's going to help you in the future. So trial and error, in my opinion, would help you get better in the future. Are they content, just getting content? Is it content hustling? Maybe so. We weren't getting paid to produce an Instagram or something like that when I was doing it, but maybe that's part of it.
So we talked off air, hanging out. How many shows would you do? You did European tours in South America, and you were all over the map. How many times in a year would you compete?
I was averaging 10, 11 shows per year when I was doing it. People thought I wasn't working hard, but I mean, the proof is in the pudding.
how hard was it to stay in contest shape for 10 shows in a year?
It was just my job, and I love competing. I love getting up there, and I wanted to see how many people I can beat throughout my career, and that was my goal.
And that's a great point, you know. And that's why Chris Cormier is one of the greatest bodybuilders of all time. I can't believe I'm giving you a compliment. It just makes me cringe. But anyways, Chris Cormier is one of the greatest bodybuilders of all times. Why? Because he won a lot of shows. Because he competed in a lot of shows. Because when I was growing up as a young man, I saw Chris Cormier all the time winning in Canada. He would win in Europe. He would compete against Flex. He would compete against Ronnie Coleman. You would know the legacy of Chris Cormier as a competitor. And I think that's something that guys right now have to take in consideration. Are you a guy that just competes at the Mr. Olympia, you know, for 5-6 years and then you're gone? I believe that your legacy is not only your results, but how often you competed, how often you battled. And I think Chris is one of those.
Dexter Jackson, you talk about the longevity of a career and the amount of times he got on stage. But you also look at, and this just gets me, the depth chart on a bodybuilding show now. Back in Chris's day, when Joe Weider's magazine was in black and white, it was colorized a couple years in, right?
Yeah, it was colored.
Right after Wizard of Oz. The guys were up 5, 7, 10 times a year back in the 80s and 90s, competing. Now you can go to a show like the Toronto Pro that had 2 or 3 guys that were a viable candidate to win, and 7 to 10 to 12 guys that you know are maybe going to be a first call out if they're lucky, top 10. But there isn't that quality of guys where you say, there's 7 Hall of Famers on stage against each other for 10 years in the 90s.
Chris brought up a great point. If you talk to Chris and his first reaction is, Tarek, I wanted to win. I wanted to beat these guys. It was good. It made him feel good about who he was as a competitor. And how crazy would it be if one of the bodybuilders nowadays, Ian Valliere, Blessing, or Hunter, or Nick Walker, came in and just evaporated all these shows and won 5 or 6 shows? What would we be talking about this guy? This guy would be the favorite to win the Mr. Olympia. Imagine if Nick Walker had won 6 shows in a row this year. Wouldn't he be the favorite? Wouldn't his hype be, you know, as a supplement company, we would be talking only about Nick Walker?
Yes, Terry, that would be something. Some of these guys, you could say, maybe they're waiting to better their physique for the future, trying to get the big one. That's something that you can consider.
But didn't you refine your physique from week to week and month to month? You made amazing gains and came in tighter and tighter and tighter.
I did. I took
that compliment and I gave it.
No, Tim, and just to add, one of the biggest things as judges, people say, oh, you guys talk a lot about conditioning. It's not that we talk a lot about conditioning, is that when we go to the Mr. Olympia, the key issue is not that they're missing muscle. The key issue is not that we're not seeing great genetics. The key issue is we're seeing a lot of guys out of shape. And the reason they're out of shape is not because they are not trying, it's because they're not testing their physique often throughout the season.
Hit or miss.
Well, let's look at the top 5 from last year's Olympia. Who has competed in the top 5? Rami, love him. Instagram's the only place we've seen him. We didn't even see him guest posing in Pittsburgh.
Could have been leaner.
Could have been leaner. Brandon did the Arnold. Who else? Hunter. We haven't seen Hottie. We haven't seen Hunter on stage. And we had Nick. Has Nick competed this year?
No.
So only one member of the top 5 from last year's Olympia has competed this year so far, and they're not going to compete until the Olympia.
But Hunter is showing his physique off a lot, and he has been tight on, I mean, he's in good shape. I don't know what type of diet he's following, but he has been looking good most of the year. He also competed in my competition.
It's a lot of Rice Krispie treats from what I understand. I follow Hunter pretty close, and I'm sure he's tightened it up by now.
He's at the age he can pull that off.
Yeah. Right now, those are good years.
Yeah.
I give a lot of credit to Blessing Awodibu. He won the Indy Pro, and then he said, I'm going to win in New York. And that gave George Farah a great opportunity to see how his body reacts. And he changed his body. Hassan Mustafa won 2 events. That gave him the opportunity to test his physique. Andrew Jacked, who's now on tremendous hype. We're going to see some changes. Apparently, they said George Farah and Flex Wheeler said he's only 65%, 70%, which is crazy. But now we're going to see him in the UK. Those guys are testing their physique. For all these guys that don't ever compete, just wait for the Olympia, and then you miss your conditioning, I'm sorry. Maybe you could have done 1 or 2 shows and tested your body.
Well, that's the great point to ask. And you're just the guy to ask on this one. So is it a 6-week or 8-week out pre-test that's the ideal to give you time to make huge adjustments, little adjustments? Where's that sweet spot for an Olympia level competitor to test themselves and still have time to make changes?
Just that final 5-week period is pretty substantial for something like that. So I would say I would like to spend more time on the stage, also getting experience. A lot of these guys can use a little bit more experience on stage, getting to know, to be a field general up there on the stage, to where you know exactly what to do if something happens. I don't know, someone bumps you, you stumble, anything, during the routine or whatever like that, or learning different poses. Sometimes you hit a pose, you're not hitting it correctly, you're not hitting it to the best of your ability. So everything like that you can learn. It's always a learning experience. So get the experience up there, guys. Get the experience.
We're going to talk about this more soon, but I had a chance to talk to George Farah and AJ Sims. AJ, who worked with Hassan Mustafa, and he made a big change between shows, and those were only a couple weeks apart. He came in really, really lean, but he came in even grainier and leaner at the next one. George was adamant about Blessing coming in tighter each time and learning what it was to tighten up that diet.
Absolutely. And if we look back at history, Brandon Curry won the Mr. Olympia when he did the Arnold. The same has happened this year. So we don't know what's going to happen. They can show up any possible way. But I'm not saying you should do 25 shows a year. All I'm saying is you get a chance to test your body once or twice. You also get a chance to get in front of the judges. Even if you win a show, they'll tell you, hey man, you can improve here, you can improve there. The supplement company that's writing you a big check, they're going to get happy, right? Hey, my guy just won another show. I think there's an advantage. Do you really want to be a 1-show-a-year bodybuilder? Is that your career?
Well, and it's not just bodybuilding. We see this in bikini and other divisions as well. Bikini, I'm seeing as an MC, I'm seeing people that are 5, 6, 8 shows into the year. And even if they're not winning a show to qualify, they're racking enough of those first, second, third, and fourth places to point themselves into the Olympia.
And Tim, you got to take in consideration, you don't know the future. You don't know if this is going to be your last show. You don't know. Something catastrophic can happen in your life to where you're not going to be able to compete anymore. I would get up there and do it while I have the chance to do it.
Well, we're going to go to break, but that leads you to like a Patrick Moore who just had the Achilles rupture.
Correct.
And you never know when that career-ending injury is going to happen. So you're right. Get up on stage, compete, test your body, find your peak. You look at bikini. They're peaking just like bodybuilders. They're finding that perfect look for themselves. Wellness, women's physique. Everybody has to find their perfection, and dialing in that diet over and over and finding those nuances is key to it. All right, guys, great topic. We've got a great one coming up right after this on more Primetime Muscle.
People always ask how I got here. I was willing to work just a little harder than everyone else. Every damn day. If I can have hundreds of hours back, you know I'm gonna grab them. Spending hours prepping chicken, rice, and vegetables, F that. I rely on perfect nutrition. I rely on Trifecta.
And we're back to Primetime Muscle, and we've got a great topic. Is Andrea Shaw the next Lenda Murray? Guys, who wants to dive in with that one?
Well, I got to tell you, a lot of the competitors now don't remember Lenda as she was in her heyday. She was quite a beast, if I can say that about a female. But she was somebody that, she had these granite delts. She had the shape of a goddess, and the quads, the back, the sass on the stage. She had the posing was impeccable, and she had the beauty behind it, and she was hard to beat. I mean, she was dynamic. I understand Andrea's far ahead of a lot of competitors now, but I mean, I'm just saying, Lenda was a beast. She was no joke.
Well, now, but it is a different evolution of the sport now. I know it's not just size, because Andrea does bring that field of beauty and the posing and the art to the size that she's developed in comparison to that era. Is that enough to carry through? And when she's looking over her shoulder at Hella Trevino and Mona Persolet and Margie Martin, what do they have to do to take that reign of winning away from Andrea Shaw?
Well, Tim, first I think Andrea Shaw is one of the most dominant bodybuilders we have right now, alongside Sydney Gillen. When we're talking about dynasties, we're looking at Sydney Gillen and Andrea Shaw. I know Andrea Shaw has just started, but when she goes on that Olympia stage, she is very dominant, very dominant. In regards to her being Lenda Murray, wow. Like Chris said, Lenda Murray is goddess-like. In my opinion, she's the greatest female bodybuilder, greatest female athlete in bodybuilding, in the history of bodybuilding. I don't even think anybody is even close to Lenda Murray. It's the physique, the posing, the beauty. Lenda Murray is what women's bodybuilding, or if you're a female athlete, a bikini athlete, and you look at Lenda Murray, you want to have her physique. It's just hard. So I think it's going to be a huge challenge for Andrea Shaw to become as big of a dynasty as Lenda Murray, but I think Andrea Shaw is pretty dominant so far. We don't know what's going to happen, but so far on stage, she's dominant.
Now, Chris, I would say we really idolize that era. The Lenda Murray type era, because there were dominant champions throughout, and even some of the second, third, fourth place people, all Hall of Famers. You, Sean, Flex, that whole era, you can name the people. I can't name too many people between Lenda's reign. You know, you got Vicky Gates and Iris Kyle, Yaxeni Oraken, but there's a good 5 to 10 year stretch where I'm hard pressed to think between Andrea and Lenda Murray.
Yes, and she lost her title, and then she came back and won the title. Chad Nichols.
Kim Krzyzewski.
Yeah, Kim Krzyzewski.
Don't worry, I'm here to help you with the names, Chris. That's fine, Chris. I'm here to help you with the names.
I was going to say,
you don't know
Chad
a lot
Nichols
of people's names.
Back so
you forget people's names all the time. She went to
Chad to get the title back.
You forget people's names all the time, man.
I actually know Kim, though. You don't.
Yeah.
Anyway, but yeah, she lost it to Kim. She came back. She actually hired the same person who brought Kim up and won the title back, and she looked possibly one of her best ever looks on stage. So,
well, you had Kim Ches, and then you had prior to that, you had Corey Everson.
Yeah.
And it really is, you're hard pressed. We're not going to know until we see the longevity of the process. But then there's a big issue for a lot of these ladies, and it's finding shows for women's bodybuilding to compete and qualify to bring the best competitors to stage. We've got an issue right now for some of the women's divisions. The Arnold Classic has axed men's 212, women's bodybuilding, figure, and I believe one more.
Wellness.
Oh, no, women's physique.
Oh, women's physique.
Women's physique. So that's kind of a travesty.
Tim, I gotta tell you, when you think of the greatest shows, you know, you have the Olympia, which is in a separate level, is the greatest bodybuilding show of all times. And then when you look to some of the other events, the first one that comes to mind is the Arnold Classic, right? But with these changes, you start thinking about the New York Pro, you start thinking about the Tampa Pro, you start thinking about as some of the second greatest events. And then the prestige starts switching, right? Because then you want to win the New York Pro, you want to win the Tampa Pro. There are events internationally that are happening, Romania Muscle Fest. We promote a show in Brazil, the Muscle Contest Brazil, that now has more classes than the Arnold Classic. So you start kind of losing a little bit of prestige once you start diminishing all the classes. It has something special about saying, hey, I'm putting on the classes. Now, I want to taking consideration what the promoter is saying, that maybe, is not getting a lot of traction with athletes? Is that what happened?
He's saying it's depth of field, that there's not enough quality competitors on stage, which of course, the people that aren't winning that outside of the Sidney Gillens, the Natalia Solteros that are coming in to win. You'll help me with some more of these top figure competitors. Women's physique, Sarah Villegas, Natalia Coelho. There's so many top competitors that aren't getting a venue to compete. And then to your point, you look at Tampa Pro. You look at Tim Gardner had over 300 pros and had no problem financially and physically hosting that event in Tampa at the Waterside Marriott. You can't tell me for a minute that the massive team that Arnold has assembled can't put on the same quality of show, and if he builds it, competitors will come.
Yes, that's saying something, because I was there at the Tampa Pro, and I'm telling you, there was a very large depth of quality athletes in those shows.
Especially bodybuilding, and all the women's divisions were
212,
top shows.
It was top notch. For sure.
Yeah, and I mean, if you're going to drop because of depth, then you might as well drop bodybuilding, because you're not getting a lot of depth in bodybuilding. Like we were talking about it. A lot of these guys are not even doing the Arnold. Hunter's not doing the Arnold. Nick Walker's not doing the Arnold. Heidi didn't do the Arnold. Are you going to drop bodybuilding? You're not going to drop bodybuilding, because it still is fundamental to have a few shows. I don't know what's happening in terms of promotion, but in my personal opinion, the prestige of an event is on the categories. The prestige of an event is the tenacity to put on a show under darkness. The Mr. Olympia in 2020 and 2021 happened, even though this world was upside down. I give a lot of credit to the Arnold Classic because it also happened. But presenting all the classes is what our sport is all about.
You have to give it to the Olympia team with Dan Solomon and everybody, Angelica, everybody that put that on with 3 weeks notice, 6 weeks notice, and said, you know what, we're moving from Vegas to Orlando. Everybody pack the U-Hauls, we're going out there. The Arnold, when the city of Columbus came to them and said, we're not really keen on having a bunch of people indoors, could have easily said to Columbus, hey, it's been 28 years, it's been 35 years. Yeah, we're going to go down the street to Cleveland, or we're going to go to Atlanta, where a lot of the other shows took place. But they didn't have the courage or the ability to do that, and shame on them. And now we come back 2 years into post-COVID, and they're saying, hey, we can't do this anymore. There is so much prestige, like you said, to that show. Those people will. It's invitation only. How are they not getting the best of the best if they're reaching out and inviting who they think is the best?
Tim, I did that show 10 times, and it meant a lot to me to go to that city every year and compete, and I just couldn't fathom being in the category to where they didn't even want to have it at that show anymore.
Do you think it's now because women's physique and women's bodybuilding both look better than Arnold did in his heyday with the evolution of the sport? You think he's a little jealous? I said that out loud, Arnold. It's not very nice. It's true, but it's not nice.
Tim is losing some followers right now.
All those followers are in their 70s. Sorry, Golden Eagle.
Well, Tim, I'm going to disagree with whoever said there's no depth in some of these categories. I want to watch Sarah Villegas going against Natalia Coelho any day of the week. And now you have this girl, Ashley Jones, that won Chicago, right? I want to watch that. Anybody that says, hey, you don't have depth in that class is sadly mistaken. Talk about the 212. Stop it right there. Derek Lunsford won the 212 last year. Sean Clarita won open shows. You have Kamal placing second. Those three guys are on the 212, so I would love to watch them win a title at the Arnold Classic. There is depth.
Well, hopefully there is depth. Hopefully there's enough outroar from all of these different divisions. It's been such a precursor to the Olympia. And we talked about how many times someone competes. That's usually February. That gives you how many months to make growth to your body and another few months to go back into prep to get into the Arnold or to win another show or two, find out the magic formula and get on stage.
Yes, we have stars now, Tim. We have stars back in the sport, and I feel like, I would give them a shot. I would give them a shot.
Well, and that also goes back to money, because we were talking about this. How are these guys making their money if they're not competing? You don't have the big checks from sponsorships anymore. Maybe they're sending you supplements and a couple thousand here and there. Instagram can only pay so much if you have that kind of traction. If you're not getting on stage, you've got to be making money. And it goes to the depth. If they would spread more of that money across those divisions, people will come out. The figure, the fitness, the wellness, everyone will come out for that big Arnold Classic check.
Absolutely. And if these guys are popular on social media and you promote a bodybuilding show with these guys, then you are getting more traction. When you have a guy like Blessing Awodibu competing in your show, you're going to sell more tickets because he's popular on social media. You just have to utilize these great athletes and their popularity on social media in your advantage as a promoter, right? You make big rivalries. You bring in Nick Walker and Blessing. You make a press conference against these guys and you say, hey guys, we're going to promote you. We're going to put you on the cover of the Arnold Classic. And you can do that with Natalia Coelho. You can do that with Sarah Viegas. You can do that with the 212 guys where Derek Lunsford and Sean Clarita finally meet to solve who's the best one. You bring in Kamal. There's opportunities. Just because they're on social media doesn't mean you can't promote their popularity on social media towards your show.
What would your generation have done if you had the power of social media as well as all those magazines and supplement sponsorships?
Tremendous work. Probably did a lot of collaborations, and I would fill a room full of guys that I'd be going up against. Jay Cutler, bring Dexter out here, do some mad work with those guys.
Oh. That was a different time, so now we have to work within what we've got. I can't see how they wouldn't promote that more and give the Andrea Shaws. It's been such a precursor. Who wins the Arnold has a solid shot at the Olympia.
We were just talking about Brendan Curry. Brendan Curry, he won the Arnold Classic and went on to win the Mr. Olympia in 2019. I mean, Ronnie Coleman was a Mr. Olympia and he decided to win. Dexter Jackson wanted to surpass Flex Wheeler on, the most Arnold Classics. So there is something to be said about the prestige, and the prestige comes. I give credit to the Arnold staff. They put on the show 2020 and 2021 under darkness. So did the Mr. Olympia. Other shows with the biggest movie stars in the world, they didn't come through. But I give them a lot of credit. I would like to know exactly what's going on, because to me, not putting a division like women's physique, Natalia Coelho versus Sarah Viegas, I would love to watch that. I'll buy the ticket right now.
Well, we're going to find all that out at the biggest show of the year, December 16th to the 18th at the beautiful Zappos Theater, which we'll be discussing in the future how beautiful a venue that is and how you don't want to miss it live and in person. And we'll discuss that and all that more after we come back on Primetime Muscle.
You diet down, train hard, and supplement smart for months. When the time comes to step on stage, don't leave your tan to chance. Go with the pros. Pro Tan. #1 worldwide since 1987 and the official sponsor of the Olympia for the last 15 years. Don't step on stage without it. Pro Tan.
All right, we're back on Primetime Muscle. We're talking wellness. And the question that we're bandying about, although I know it's not a two-person race because there are so many great wellness competitors right now, is Francielle Matos able to hold off Isa Pereira?
Tim, this is... Isa Pereira just won the Arnold Classic.
It's sexy when he says it, by the way.
Yes.
Isa Pereira.
I can pronounce those names. Isa Pereira just won the Arnold Classic, and she took third in the Mr. Olympia. We were just talking about the momentum, right? So Angela Borges placed second at the Mr. Olympia, and then she goes against Isa Pereira at the Arnold, and she surpasses Angela Borges. So now she becomes the main obstacle for Francielle Matos to retain her title. They are incredible competitors. You're talking about top of the food chain in the wellness division. I think Isa Pereira is in her mid or late 20s, and Francielle Matos has the maturity, but you don't know how long she's going to be competing. So we might be witnessing a transitioning moment here, but I don't know if it's this year or next year. But one mistake by any of them, and you could see things right there get confused.
Now, Chris, you like this division.
I love this division.
Yeah, look at the
I love it.
smile on that man's face.
That's the only division you can call a woman thick, and she's okay with it.
Two C's.
Too thick.
Two C's.
Thick.
Well, and I mentioned it's not a two-person race in this. We just had Devin, who won the Texas Pro, who looked incredible. You've got Yarishno, who was one of the founders of this division with, talk about a following. It's not just her glutes that follow her, it's 2 million people from across the world.
Yeah, absolutely.
Dr. Sonny Andrews. Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of people in this, but when we look at these two front runners, we're going to go to the pictures in a minute and put up some beautiful artwork. Tell us about this division and what really sets it apart more than glutes and glute ham tie-ins. What are we looking at from these ladies that's going to put them over the top?
So, Tim, that's a great question. We talk a lot about balance, right? Balance in bodybuilding, having that harmony between your upper body and lower body. Well, in this category, it's not balanced. Your lower body should be more developed than your upper body. Make that very clear. You can't be as big as a women's Z competitor on top. Your lats cannot be that big. Your posing cannot emphasize any of your size on top. You need to be quite developed on the quads, the glutes, and the calves, and you have to pose in order to emphasize your lower half, and a lot of times, because they love to work out, minimize your upper body.
Well, Tarek, don't you see some girls up there with arms too big for the category? And they're actually competing in wellness? In
every division. Chris, we just had a men's Z competitor in Texas, Andrea from Romania. He's a phenomenal competitor. He's a human specimen, but his arms are too big. That happens in figure. That happens in every category, and they get marked down. The issue is that sometimes people go and say, well, they want to show with big arms and they shouldn't have big arms. Well, stop for a second. Did you look at the second place? Did you look at the third place? Sometimes the person that wins the event is not the perfect criteria, but they were the best on that lineup. So I agree with you. Some of them have big arms. They're going to be marked down, but that doesn't mean they can't score high and win an event.
That's one of the hardest things for people who, the only people that don't hate the judging are people who didn't win. Everybody else has a problem with the judging. But it's so important to look at second, third, fourth, and fifth place against first and say, this is why I ended up in this position.
Guys, in every category, you need to artistically put your physique together. Your trainers, your training partner, people in your camp, got to let you know, hey, your arms are too big. Hey, your shoulders are overpowering. Hey, you have your back is too big for this category. That's what you have to do to be at the top of the sport.
You're just too big for your category. What I wouldn't give just once in my life for somebody to say, you're too big for that category.
Well, Chris mentions a great point, and I often tell competitors this. Do not pick the category. Allow the category to pick you.
It's like Harry Potter.
Let me give you a few references here. Okay, Chris Bumstead turns pro at the North Americans as a heavyweight champion. He never competed as a bodybuilder. He is the 3-time classic physique champion. Breon Ansley, he turned pro as a middleweight at the USA's, and he's now a classic physique 2-time champion. I'm not going to stop right there. I'm going to tell you that Angelica Teixeira, 2-time Miss Bikini Olympia, she started as figure, but she realized her best was going to be in bikini. Latoya Watts, who we love. Nobody can imagine Latoya Watts in any other category. She started in bikini, and now she is, a figure champion. Do not pick your category. Allow your body to pick the category for you.
Just the facts. All right, let's get to some facts and some beautiful pictures here, fellas. Let's look at the ladies that we've got. Francielle, is that it?
Francielle Matos and Isa Pereira Nunes. Okay, guys, we are talking here, again, two of the best female bodybuilders. And when I use the word bodybuilders, I'm not shy about talking about bodybuilding. These are bodybuilders. They chose a category, wellness, and they do a good job. First thing I'm going to tell you here, Tim and Chris, is from the front, they're very close. This is very equivalent. They both know how to pose. You can see that their posing is quite identical. They have small waist. The level of muscularity is perfect. They're both emphasized. Look at their hand on their hip and then their hand to the glute. None of them is covering their glute, but their hand is not coming out. This hand makes it aesthetic. This is not easy to do. Chris can attest to this. They're facing forward, but their body's to the side.
Not easy at all. That tends to be a hip flexor issue of really loosening that up. But in this lineup, look at the size and depth. No striations, very important to know. No visible feathering. But Isa Pereira, there is something about the depth and the quality of that quad, Chris.
That quad is tremendous. I speak with her quite often, and I'm telling you, she wants to win this title. She had a lot of issues, family issues this year. I think her heart's going to be really in it. I think she's going to be someone to really look out for this year. But look at the thickness of that quad. You know, and you see the maturity over here. But she has the body and she has the heart, and I think she's gonna be tough to beat.
Now, Tarek, going back to the posing, no one has rolled that shoulder to pop that lat out, so we're keeping those thin lines. And the difference in the shoulders from other divisions.
Well, I'm gonna tell you this, Tim. A lot of times competitors, they open their lats. The reason they open their lats is because they want to make their waist small.
Right.
Now, there's a flip side to that. If you have big shoulders, you're a bikini competitor, you're a wellness competitor, and you have big shoulders and you open that lat, that shoulder is going to be overemphasized. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So you have to know your physique. So if I'm a wellness competitor, Chris is a wellness competitor, my shoulder is too big, I want to close my lats a little bit so I don't overemphasize. Now, if Chris doesn't have big shoulders, he can open that lat and it's going to help him have a small waist. Both of them here don't have massive shoulders, so you can see a small expansion of their lats, which makes their waist look small.
Now, Chris is going to have to turn really hard so his 19-inch neck doesn't make his waist look thick. He's really going to have to pop that.
Chris got some booty, let me tell you.
There's some glorious booty.
Now that
in there.
he's gained 70 pounds,
I was the original
he's got some booty.
I was the original wellness competitor.
Even when he competed, he had some booty.
And that's the mature booty.
Yes,
So
yes.
let's step over here, Chris, and let's give this a look real quick. Now, straight to the glutes, and of course the tie-ins there from the side. It is a difference in the conditioning. So
Well,
is that maturity or is that conditioning?
So if you look at them, we're not seeing cross striations. I'm not seeing cross striations here, okay? I'm also not seeing veins all over, okay? Vascularization, I'm not seeing cross striations. What I'm seeing is soft separation, right? Soft separation, I'm not seeing deep separation. What I want to mention here is this. They're both hitting a pose where you can see their glutes and looking back. It's a very good pose. It shows the glute development and everything. But in this case, let's break it down right now. Francielle Matos is hitting the pose a little bit better than Isa Pereira. She has both feet facing the back and she's turning to the back, which is adding a little bit more fullness and separation to the glutes. This is exactly what Isa Pereira has to do at the Mr. Olympia. She has to have both feet facing the curtains and then turn back, because that's going to emphasize the fullness and the separation on the glutes. Talk about details. People talk about conditioning, shape, lines, fullness. This is a pose that Francielle Matos beat Isa Pereira. On the posing, she beat. So guys, pay attention to posing. You can win a show and you can lose a show with posing.
I can't say enough, calves are hard to come by. Isa's calves are phenomenal. All right, now here we go to some glute ham tie-in, some quad sweep, the whole operation. Chris, what are we seeing?
This is like the best pose for the trademark pose for the wellness. This is the one everyone wants to see. Straight on from the back, you can see Isa has the fullness, the glutes a little bit longer. You got the champ here with the more clear tie-in from the glutes. The shape is great. She was a little bit leaner, I would say, but I think some of that comes from her maturity. And I saw her backstage last year, and I'm telling you, I'm sure you saw her backstage also.
Oh, yeah.
And she just walking around, you could see she was the champ.
Oh,
She was a
no
champ.
questions.
Yeah.
She didn't make the stop by our pay-per-view booth. I was a little sad about that. She went straight over to have her picture taken.
Well, Tim, you don't deserve that kind of attention
No.
yet.
I'm just wondering, are they going to have the real deal booty shake?
Now, Chris, could you please turn to the camera? Guys,
I
here.
wonder if someone going to have the real deal booty shake
Since
up there
Chris
one day.
is not turning to the camera, I'm gonna turn because you can't do it because of your shoulder, as if we're doing shoulder press in this show. Okay, Chris, since you lost your concentration, could you please move a little bit to the side?
Okay.
Let's talk about glutes and thighs. Every time you look at these competitors from the back, you're talking about great development on the glutes and great development on the legs. And one of the reasons that has become so popular around the world is because a lot of women, they don't want to be thin on the bottom. They want to have the butt, they want to have the legs, and in the off season, these women, they look fantastic. Now, you can see differences here, Tim. You can see that Isa Pereira Nunes has more development on the quads than Francielle Matos. Now, is that good or is that bad? It has to match the development on the glutes. And this development on Isa Pereira's quads is a little bit, and I repeat, maybe a little bit over. If you look at Francielle Matos, she has a little bit more harmony between glutes and quads. Now, what can we do to fix this? If Isa Pereira comes to me and she asks me for feedback, I'm going to tell her. What you're going to do, with all due respect here, I hate to cover you here.
Good.
With all due respect, guys, look at this. Small modification in posing. Get your toes a little bit inwards, and that's going to prevent the quads from overpowering the glutes. So a small modification, which is gonna make her a little bit more harmonic. What she has is a small, tiny physique, and any development can be overemphasized easily. So she needs to get those toes in so that the quads don't overpower the glutes.
All right. Well, this is another one of those divisions that is growing leaps and bounds every year. Every show, every NPC show is gaining in size. And this year's Olympia, we do have so many great challengers coming to that stage that are going to be battling for that title and trying to overthrow Francielle Matos.
It's a new division. There's a lot of great competitors coming up. Sunny Andrews. We talk about Sunny Andrews. She won 2 events, if not 3. I could be wrong, but she won 2 events convincingly. We had Isamara Santos from Brazil, who came in and won an event. And you have people coming up and winning events. If there is a surprise, if someone else wins this Wellness Olympia, it's a new division. None of us should be actually surprised it happened.
None of us at all. All right, guys, we got to wrap this on behalf of Tarek Gilgindi with his insights and Chris Cormier with all of his experience and insights as well. I'm Tim Wilkins, and we'll see you on the next Primetime Muscle. Olympia dates coming up December 16th to the 18th. Like and subscribe to this show to follow all the information. And as always, what's in this show? Just the facts.
Just the facts.
It's just the facts.
Just the facts.
Just the facts, gentlemen.
We'll see you next time.